You want to know why she's slipping through your fingers, why every good morning text, every compliment, every sweet effort you pour into her turns invisible. It's because you've mistaken affection for ammunition. You think attention is connection. But what she craves isn't comfort, it's chemical. Every kind word you whisper, every glance that confirms she matters, it doesn't just flatter her. It floods her with dopamine. Not metaphorically, not romantically, clinically. You're not courting her heart, you're triggering her bloodstream. But here's the part no one told you. The dose stops working the moment she expects it. When kindness becomes rhythm, her mind numbs to the melody. What once felt like fire now lands like background noise. You didn't do anything wrong. You just did it too often. Validation, when constant, doesn't connect. It disappears, and when it disappears, so do you. You become the wallpaper she stops noticing, the song she skips without thinking. You become the man who's always there, and that's exactly why she stops looking for you. You believed giving more would make her stay. But you forgot the rule of all addictive systems. What's always available never feels essential. The truth, she doesn't want the flood, she wants the thirst. A woman's psychology, evolution-wired trauma, formed socially sharpened response to a stimulus deeper than love. It's uncertainty. You praise her once and disappear. You admire her deeply and walk away. You notice what no one else sees, and then leave her wondering what you saw. That's not playing games, that's playing biology. See, the men who become her drug are not the loudest. They're the ones who ration attention like oxygen. They feed just enough to spark hunger, never enough to create comfort. They understand the rule of rhythm, give 70% hold, 30%. The 70 says, I'm present. The 30 whispers, I could vanish. And that whisper haunts her. She begins to look for you in empty rooms. She checks her phone without knowing why. She dresses up for nowhere, hoping you'll appear. You didn't manipulate her. You recalibrated her nervous system from comfort to craving. And yet most men, they do the opposite. They compliment without aim. Praise like beggars hoping for scraps. They make deposits in the validation bank account like it's charity. What they don't see is that overgiving is underpowering, because validation, when too frequent, loses its weight. You look great. You're beautiful. You always amaze me. She hears it, but it doesn't land. It doesn't scratch her soul. It doesn't shake her. But when you say something about how you moved in that room, it silenced everything now her breath catches. Because that didn't just affirm her looks, it recognized her impact. Here's the secret. Surface flattery slides off, but recognition of essence that cuts. You praise her strength when no one noticed she was carrying the load. You admire the decision she made that cost her everything. You call out the intelligence in her silence. These are validations that don't stroke her ego, they crown it. And yet you don't pour it daily. You speak it when it matters. Like a sniper, not a sprinkler. Because power isn't in the flood, it's in the aimed drop. But let me warn you, miss the rhythm and the magic breaks. Too much absence, she grows bitter. Too much presence, she grows blind. The dance is precision. Feed her, but never fill her. Show up, but never settle in. Touch her soul and leave before she expects the next word. She will not say it, but she will feel it. The ache, the shift, the recalibration. And if she's not ready, she'll call you cold. But if she is, she'll never forget you, because you were the first man who didn't chase her feelings. You summoned them. That's the first fracture, the first opening, the first emotional gap. And if you've read this far, you're ready for the second. But don't mistake that for comfort. The next one breaks most men. Not because it's hidden, but because it feels right. Too right. And that's the trap. Every man has fallen into this trap at least once. Some never climb out. They meet a woman who says, I just want someone stable. I just want to feel safe. I need consistency. So what do? They become everything she asked for. Predictable, present, immediate. They check in often. They text first. They plan every moment. And then just when he thinks he's secured her, she vanishes. It doesn't make sense. She asked for reassurance. He gave it. She said she hated games, so he stopped playing them. But what he didn't understand is this. Her words spoke comfort. Her biology craved danger. Not the danger of pain, but the thrill of the unpredictable. Not the fear of violence, but the pulse of uncertainty. She wanted the version of him she couldn't control. The one she had to guess about. The one she wasn't sure had already chosen her. But he gave her clarity. And clarity, when delivered too soon, murders desire. Her hunger dies the moment she knows what's coming next. And her nervous system, built over centuries of evolution, isn't calibrated for comfort. It's wired to react to what it cannot calculate. That's why she can't stop thinking about the man who doesn't always reply. Why she re-watches messages from someone who never over-explained. Why the guy who kept parts of his world behind locked doors still haunts her long after he's gone. It's not because he was rude, it's because he remained unresolved. The Zeigarnik effect explains it. We remember unfinished stories more than completed ones. Our minds loop them obsessively, searching for closure. In love, women are no exception. If she knows everything, you become nothing. You become fully known, which in attraction language means fully conquered. And conquest once completed seeks a new battlefield. So what do? You give her the vision, but never the blueprint. You speak of your goals, but you don't outline the schedule. You share pieces of your past, but not the whole history. You leave her guessing, not because you're hiding, but because you're building. You don't fabricate mystery. You live a life complex enough that it naturally generates it. That's the difference. Boys create drama to seem deep. Men have depth and simply don't explain it to everyone. She asks, "What did you do today?" You say, "Handled something important, shifted a few things." Then you go back to your world. She doesn't know what that meant. Her mind starts reaching grasping questioning. What changed? Who was involved? What does that mean for us? She becomes her own story, trying to fit herself into a chapter she hasn't read yet. That's not manipulation. That's how mystery works. But mystery without meaning is just noise. You must have weight behind your silence. There must be substance beneath your shadows, or else you're just fog, not fire. So you ration clarity. You control exposure. You never become obvious, because the moment she can predict you, she stops craving you. This is not cruelty. This is architecture. Your presence should be felt, but never pinned down. You give just enough to spark imagination, but never enough to satisfy it. You offer the drop, never the cup. And when she drinks it, she should be left wanting 5 more. Here's how it plays out. You meet. She feels something different. Not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't. Your silences echo. Your glances linger. Your absence lingers longer. She replays your words. She rewrites your pauses. She wonders if you meant more than you let on. That's not game. That's gravitational design. But here's the line. Mystery is power until it becomes neglect. Vanish too long, she detaches. Reveal too much, she disengages. You must dance the line, accessible enough to feel possible, distant enough to feel rare. Let her know just enough to hope, keep enough hidden to haunt. Because once she starts trying to solve you, you've already shifted the dynamic. She stops being the prize. She becomes the pursuer. And she won't even know why. All she'll feel is the ache, the question, the unresolved presence of you in rooms you never entered. She won't call it obsession, but her body will. This is emotional gap too, and it's more dangerous than the first, because it feels right to ignore, but it kills quietly. Now, if you're still with me, you're not here for comfort. You're here to learn power, and the next fracture. It's the one she'll never admit exists. But her instincts, they scream it. There's a look she gives you that words can't fake. It's sharp, silent, and tinged with something primal. She saw the way that woman laughed at your joke. saw how the barista smiled just a little longer than she should have. She noticed that one girl's eyes stayed on you even after you walked past. And suddenly you weren't just hers. You were his, the version of you who others want, not the version she's already claimed. And everything changed. She'll never say it. She may not even understand it. But in that moment, something inside her tightened. Because every instinct buried deep inside her evolutionary wiring just screamed, if other women want him, I need to make sure I keep him. This isn't vanity. It isn't jealousy. It's nature in high heels. You see, attraction isn't born in isolation. It multiplies in mirrors, in glances, in echoes of desire bouncing off other bodies. It's simple. If others value him, he must be valuable. This is not modern. This is ancient. This is the jungle wrapped in perfume and filtered Instagram stories. You think you're building connection through romantic dates, but the most powerful shift happens when she sees others seeing you. It's not about being a flirt. It's about being seen not just by her, but by the room. It's about becoming the man who draws gravity without chasing it. You walk into a space. You speak less. You move with intention. You own your silence. And people respond, not because you demand it, but because you embody movement, purpose, stillness. That's what she feels, not charm, power. And the moment she senses other women respond to it, her perception recalibrates. Suddenly, you're not the safe bet. You're the rare one. The risk, the reward, and in her nervous system that sets off the signal. Win him or lose him to someone else. That's the third emotional gap, and the most dangerous, because when she feels this trigger, her energy shifts. She invests. She dresses different. She watches you more closely. She initiates more than she ever did. But here's where most men destroy it. They take that edge and weaponize it. They flirt loudly. They post stories with other women. They try to provoke jealousy on purpose, amateur moves, amateur outcomes, because this isn't about playing games. It's about understanding leverage. Here's how the initiated move. You don't deny attention. You don't seek it either. You become the man that people, including women, gravitate toward. Because your presence has weight. Your words land with intention. You're not performing. You're existing at full signal. You aren't apologizing for being wanted, but you're not parading it either. And that's what destroys her equilibrium. Not the performance, the authenticity. Because if you're the man others desire and you still choose her suddenly, that choice feels priceless. Not because you had no one else, but because you had options and still stopped for her. Now she's hooked. Not on the affection, on the exclusivity. You are the man she could lose. And nothing accelerates commitment like the fear of loss. But here's the knife edge. Too much pressure she folds. Too little she forgets. If she feels like she's always competing, you breed insecurity. You don't stir attraction, you spark anxiety. And anxious women don't love. They guard, they question, they push you away before you can pull away first. But if you make yourself too safe, too consistent, too easy to reach, you become background noise. Forgettable. The mastery is in balance. You let her feel that she's chosen, but not possessed. You let her know others notice you, but never make her feel replaceable. You stay rooted in your purpose, not her reactions. Because you're not chasing admiration, you're attracting alignment. Now imagine this. You're at a dinner. She's beside you. A woman approaches, asks a thoughtful question. You don't shrink. You don't overcorrect. You don't flirt back. You respond measured, calm, grounded. And in that moment, your woman sees it all. How other women feel safe around you. How your presence draws smiles without seduction. How you're charismatic, but not performative. She registers every detail, and she recalculates. He doesn't belong to me. He's choosing to be here. That's what makes her stay, not the locked cage, but the open gate you never walked through. She's not afraid of being loved. She's afraid of being forgotten. So show her, not through possession, but through posture, that she is your deliberate pause, not your only option. And that difference, it rewires her entirely. This is not seduction, it's presence with discipline. And this is only emotional gap 3. If these first 3 shook you, understand this. The next one doesn't stir her attraction, it anchors her soul. You think strength is about how loud you speak, how fast you respond, how intensely you care. But strength, the kind that holds a woman's mind, body, and chaos together, isn't loud. It's composed. It's the kind of energy that doesn't flinch when everything around it shatters. The kind of masculinity that doesn't need to shout to be felt. It's presence without performance. Stability without submission. She doesn't need a fixer. She doesn't need a hero. She needs a man who can stand still in her storm without becoming part of it. And most men fail here, not because they're bad men, but because no one taught them the difference between support and surrender. She comes home unraveling work stress, social drama, emotion without names. She's drowning. And you dive in. You try to rescue her. You try to solve, soften, explain, correct. But here's the truth. She didn't need rescue. She needed a shore. She needed to collapse in front of you, not be told to stand up. She needed to hear, "Let it out! I'm not going anywhere." Not, "Here's how to fix it." Because her chaos wasn't a question. It was a test of your emotional posture. Would you stay centered? Would you remain calm? Would you allow her waves to crash without making them about you? That's what she's scanning for, not your answers, your stillness. Because if you react, if you spiral with her, she loses the very anchor she didn't know she was reaching for. Most men try to mirror her mood thinking it shows care. But what it really shows is lack of regulation. You feel her sadness and you sink too. You see her rage and you panic. You rush to smooth, to suppress, to escape. And in doing so, you become just another weight she carries. But when you sit still, when your eyes stay soft and your breath doesn't change when you say, "Sounds like a lot, I'm here," you pass the test. Not because you fixed anything, but because you didn't flinch. You were unshaken, not distant, just anchored. This is emotional leadership. And it has nothing to do with being cold. It's about being the one thing in her life that doesn't crumble when she does. And that's rarer than you think. She may not say it. She may not even know how to describe it. But her nervous system will remember. This is a man I can collapse around. Without fearing I'll destroy him. That's power. Silent, still, unshakable. But emotional leadership isn't just about responding well. It's about how you carry yourself when nothing is said. It's how you walk into a room and bring gravity. It's how you sit across from her and say nothing, and yet she feels seen. It's not dominance, it's presence. You lead not because you control. You lead because you are the only one who doesn't need the noise. And the truth, most men aren't built for this. Not because they're weak, but because they've never been taught to stand still long enough to become the mirror instead of the echo. But you, if you're still here, still reading, still absorbing this, you are not most men. You're not chasing control. You're learning composition. And that changes everything. Because now you're not reacting to her. You're reading her. You're not trying to please her mood. You're holding space for it. You've become the frame. And when you master that frame, you don't have to pull her close. She leans in on her own, because she's been screaming her whole life. And finally someone heard her without running. That is emotional anchoring, and it's the 4th emotional gap. When you master this one, you shift from attraction to gravity. But don't mistake it for the finish line. The final gap is deeper, sharper. It's the one that cracks her open and makes her trust you with pieces she's never shown anyone. And you'll never access it unless you understand what makes her completely unique. Here's the hardest truth most men never face. She is not a formula. She is not a rule you memorize or a sequence you apply. She's a living blueprint coded by her past, shaped by her pain, and layered with instincts even she hasn't fully unraveled. And if you want to lead her, if you want to unlock her deepest loyalty, you do not generalize her. You decode her. This is where the weak fall. Because they confuse charisma with comprehension. They think a rehearsed compliment works on everyone. They think emotional strategy is about recycling lines that worked on someone else. But the fifth emotional gap doesn't open for charm. It opens for awareness, personalized, laser-focused, unmistakably her. Let me make it clear, if you treat her like a category, you eliminate yourself as a contender. This is psychological personalization, the ability to see how she's wired, not how women are, because no two are shaped by the same trauma. No two are driven by the same insecurity. No two fall in love through the same channel. Your job is not to guess, it's to observe. You watch how she reacts to silence. Does she rush to fill it or lean into it? You notice how she seeks reassurance. Is it casual or is it compulsive? You track what unsettles her. Is it your unpredictability or the thought of other women? Because whichever response she gives tells you where her dominant gap lies. If she constantly checks her reflection, asks you if you still want her, needs to hear she matters again and again, her drug is validation. So you don't flood her with praise. You don't repeat the obvious. You drop precision strikes, not "you're beautiful," but "the way your eyes freeze people mid-sentence, I swear they speak louder than your voice." Not "you're smart," but "you catch things others never notice." It's not intellect, it's edge. Because now she doesn't just feel seen, she feels studied, understood, distilled. If she panics when plans are unclear, needs to know what you're thinking, gets frustrated when you take time to respond, her trigger is uncertainty. So you don't smother her with details. You don't erase mystery. You simply create reliability within the unknown. You might say, "I'll be offline for a while handling something I've been building. Just know I'll be back when I'm done." No drama, no full itinerary, just signal. You stay partially veiled, not as manipulation, but as calibration. She doesn't get to predict you, but she learns to trust your rhythm. If she brings up other women, asks about exes, tests your loyalty through hypothetical scenarios, competition is her wound. And if you're reckless, you'll weaponize it. You'll trigger her jealousy, then call it desire. But the man who understands lets her feel chosen without becoming cheap. You don't brag. You don't flaunt. You simply exist at full wattage. Other women may look. You notice it, but never lean into it. Then, when you're alone with her, you say softly, "I noticed how quiet you got earlier. Just so you know, if I wanted anyone else, I wouldn't be here." One sentence, not flattery, assurance. Not of possession, but of selection. That's the difference. And that's what heals her instinct without inflaming it. Now hear this. This level of precision is rare. Because most men don't want to learn her architecture. They want to mold her into comfort. But you, if you're still reading, you're not here to be average. You're here to become the only man who ever made her feel completely recognized. That's not a tactic, that's legacy. Because when you speak to her nervous system, not just her ears, you own space in her no man has ever entered. You stop being the guy who gets her. You become the man she can't imagine being misunderstood by. And that level of personalization, that's the lock. You don't need to seduce. You don't need to convince. You simply reflect her inner world with such accuracy that she has no defense. Because you're not performing for her approval. You're mirroring what she's always hoped a man could see. Not the surface, not the image, the code. Now, understand this. This final gap will backfire if your foundation is unstable. Precision without grounding becomes obsession. Awareness without discipline becomes control. So before you enter this final door, ask yourself, have you mastered your own inner battlefield? Because if not, this won't forge a bond, it'll ignite a collapse. But if you have, you're no longer just attractive, you're unforgettable. And the woman who meets that version of you, she won't just feel love, she'll feel safety without stagnation, mystery without fear, leadership without domination. And that's how you shift her instincts permanently. That's how you stop being one of many and become the one she never even knew she was waiting for. You don't need her to follow. You need her to feel pulled, subtly, voluntarily, irrevocably. Obsession doesn't begin when she likes you. It starts when she can't locate the source of your gravity, but still finds herself circling it. And that doesn't happen by accident. It's architecture. Not seduction, not manipulation, not some pickup line dripping in false mystery. It's the quiet, deliberate construction of a presence that feels like home and wildfire at the same time. Let's break it down. You've activated her gaps. Tension through unpredictability, worth through earned validation, urgency through subtle competition, safety through silent anchoring, intimacy through personalization. But if you can't hold that structure, she'll outgrow it or implode under it. Why? Because when a woman starts to feel deeply seen, deeply held, and deeply drawn, in her system doesn't just respond. It accelerates. She begins to test. Not to break you, but to check if what she's feeling is safe to trust. This is the edge most men fumble. They mistake this phase for emotional sabotage. But it's not sabotage. It's confirmation seeking. She wants to know, will you flinch when I doubt? Will you stay solid when I collapse again? Is your presence real or a role you're playing? If you crumble here, over-explain, overreact, overcorrect, you confirm her worst fear, that your power was performative, that you're just another actor in a well-tailored mask. But if you hold, if you stay composed and continue to mirror her without absorbing her chaos, if your silence remains weighted, your words remain calibrated, and your attention remains intentional, then something profound happens. She gives up control, not because she's weak, not because you took it, but because you've built something strong enough to contain her without confining her. This is when obsession begins to anchor. She starts sharing stories she's never told, starts speaking in sighs instead of sentences, starts looking at you like you're no longer a man but a mirror she's terrified of and addicted to. She'll walk away and come back, push you and then pull harder, laugh in the middle of crying, because now you're holding parts of her that no one ever stayed long enough to see. And she's not sure if she's allowed to hand them over. But here's your rule: hold, don't clutch. Let her unfold at her pace. Let her anger pass through you without needing to defend. Let her silence hang without rushing to fill it. You are not her therapist. You are not her savior. You are the man who knows exactly when to be stone and exactly when to become air. That's the rarest art. The masculine containment of the feminine flood without needing to build a dam. You don't restrict, you redirect. Now pay attention, because this is where the immature fail spectacularly. They think obsession means ownership. They think now that she's mine, I can relax, possess, demand. Wrong, because the moment she feels owned, she stops choosing. And when a woman stops choosing, you've already lost her. This is where emotional dominance becomes emotional death. The correct move. Let her feel you, but never hold all of you. Your purpose still comes first. Your mission remains unshaken. Your time is still yours to give, not hers to take. She doesn't need all of you. She needs to feel that the part you offer is not performance, but power real and freely given. That's what obsession feeds on. Choice with consequence. Presence with limits. Depth with mystery. And here's something no one tells you. The men who are most desired never ask to be. They just live in a rhythm most women can't ignore. He disappears not to punish, but to pursue something greater. He returns. Not because he's lonely, but because he chooses her, in spite of the world that also wants him. That tension, that gap between full availability and full absence, is where her fixation lives. Not in the "I miss you" texts, not in the flowers, not in the grand gestures, in the pause, in the wait, in the wondering. She doesn't want a man who overwhelms her with closeness. She wants a man who reminds her through every action that he could be anywhere but chose to be here. And that awareness, it reprograms her. Not to love you, to crave you. And she'll never call it by its name. But her eyes will, her touch will, her absence will. And when she comes back without needing to explain why, you'll know. The obsession isn't yours. It's hers, and you never had to raise your voice. You've seen it. And that one man who enters a room, and every woman shifts not because he's loud, but because he's undeniable. He doesn't scan for approval. He doesn't shrink in silence. He's not trying to impress anyone. And yet, everyone notices. Why? Because his center is intact. Not polished, not perfect, anchored. See all the strategies: validation, uncertainty, competitive desire, leadership, personalization, mean nothing if the man behind them is hollow. A hollow man imitates power. A centered man radiates it. This is where 99% of men fail. They study her behavior. They read tactics. They memorize lines. But they never ask the one question that actually unlocks her. Am I someone she can orbit without losing her balance? Because when your emotions still get hijacked by rejection, when her silence makes you spiral, when attention from another woman feels like oxygen, when her praise becomes your identity, you're not leading, you're leaking. You're not attracting, you're compensating. And she feels it. You don't have to say a word. Your energy whispers it before you open your mouth. That's why some men trigger instant disinterest. Not because they're bad, but because their self-abandonment is louder than their confidence. So if you want to become the man who bends her chemistry, you must become the man whose validation isn't for sale, whose mission doesn't pause for approval, whose presence doesn't waver when she tests him. Let's talk about that presence. It's not stoicism. It's not pretending nothing affects you. It's knowing exactly what deserves your response and what doesn't. It's choosing discernment over drama. She cancels plans last minute. You don't sulk, you don't retaliate. You simply say, "No worries, my time filled itself." She goes cold for a few days. You don't chase. You don't fold. You keep moving because your world was never put on pause waiting for hers. This isn't arrogance, it's emotional discipline. You have to be a man who lives by his own gravity, not drawn into storms you didn't start, not shaken by moods that aren't yours to fix, not performing for a crown you never needed to earn. That's the paradox. The man who moves women the most is the one who doesn't move for them. He's not withholding to punish. He's just not available to be consumed. And she feels that. Not in what you say, but in what you don't need from her. You don't need her to fill your identity. You don't need her to constantly reassure your place. You don't need her mood to determine your own. And that is terrifyingly rare. She may even test it. She may push to see if you'll bend. She may poke to see if you'll panic. And when you don't, she melts. Because her nervous system has been scanning her whole life for a man whose frame doesn't collapse under pressure. A man who doesn't turn her emotional volatility into a personal identity crisis. And when she finds it, she doesn't just relax. She attaches, deeply, viscerally, subconsciously. And no, this isn't about control. This is about leading by example. When she sees that you don't chase drama, she rethinks hers. When she sees you don't need approval, she gives hers freely. When she sees you don't fall apart, she stops testing how far she can push. Because now your calm becomes contagious. And without a single command, without a single demand, you become the emotional blueprint she doesn't even realize she's trying to match. You're not asking her to follow. You're becoming someone she wants to follow without ever being told to. That is real power, not in what you impose, but in what you embody. And that, my friend, is what separates the men who get attention from the men who shape reality. Now we move into the last layer, the rarest, the final, the silent gate, where you don't just influence her thoughts, you live in them. Obsession is not about presence, it's about echo. It's what lingers when you leave. What plays in her head at 2:43 a.m. What she hears in the silence after the conversation ends. It's not your voice, it's your absence, and how deliberately you crafted it. This is the final shift. Not into her arms, but into her nervous system. When she's with friends, but she's not really listening. When she laughs, but thinks of how your smile doesn't try too hard. When another man tries to impress her, and she finds herself comparing his noise to your stillness. You're not even in the room, and yet somehow you are. That's what happens when you don't just trigger her interest, You embed into her structure. It's no longer about attraction, it's about imprint. And that only happens when the weight of your silence speaks louder than 1,000 men performing for her love. You became the plot twist in her storyline, the man who didn't rush to claim her, but left room for her to claim herself beside you. Because here's the truth. Most men chase her attention, a few earn her affection, but only one becomes part of how she thinks. And he never had to beg, never had to perform, never had to threaten to leave. He simply existed with such depth, such purpose, such inner sovereignty, that her system couldn't forget him. Not even when it wanted to. Now let me make something painfully clear. This isn't about manipulation. You are not here to twist women's minds into servitude. You are here to understand. Because the moment you understand, you stop chasing reactions and start creating environments. You don't control her. You shape the weather of your presence. And she either breathes it in or chokes on how much she craves it when it's gone. That's the difference between men who attract and men who define the gravitational pull. Now remember, everything we've explored, validation, uncertainty, competition, emotional leadership, psychological personalization, these are not games. They are gaps, unresolved spaces in every woman's emotional landscape. Spaces most men rush to fill with noise, approval, or pressure. But you don't fill, you frame. You understand that desire doesn't live in security. It lives in the possibility of being chosen again and again and again by someone who never had to stay, but still does. That's how you become permanent. Because what's unforgettable is not what you say. It's the presence she couldn't decode, the calm she couldn't replicate, the precision that saw her with surgical clarity, and the boundary that kept you just far enough to keep her hungry for more. This is the new kind of man. Not cold, not manipulative, not needy, but anchored, aware, selective, still. And when a woman meets him, she doesn't just shift how she sees men. She shifts how she sees herself. Because finally she's in the presence of someone who doesn't need her chaos to feel powerful, or her praise to feel worthy. Someone who can hold her without being held hostage by her. That man, if you choose to be him, doesn't compete with other men. Because he doesn't even exist on the same spectrum. He plays by different rules. He lives by different rhythms. He isn't louder, just quieter and infinitely more dangerous. Now it's your move. Pick one gap, practice it. Not for a day, not halfway. Fully, for 7 days. Watch what happens. Watch how she responds. Watch how the energy shifts without a word spoken. Because the men she obeys, they don't demand it. They radiate a frequency she can't tune out. And if you've made it this far, you've already begun broadcasting it. Welcome to the architecture. Welcome to the level most men will never touch. If this video hit something in you that most people won't admit out loud, good. You're not here by accident. You're not scrolling. You're studying. You're remembering what the world tried to make you forget, that power is built, not begged for. So if you're the type who doesn't just consume, but calculates questions, executes, hit subscribe. Not for me, for the version of you that's about to be lethal. Leave a comment only if you're ready to leave your old programming behind. And share this with one man who deserves to wake up. The rest can keep playing nice. We're done with that.